Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Yes. The YouTube stream is up and running. There's some changes that were made that we took care of, but you can actually go if you can't get to it, you can just go to youtube.com/Egberto Willies/live, or just youtube.com/Egberto Willies. We're going to have a great show for you today. What is the show going to be about? First of all, let's go ahead and get busy and show it to you. Stop the fear. Just vote BIGLY. Stop the fear. Just vote BIGLY. That is what we need to do. We cannot let Trump have the narrative. Americans must disregard the president's words. He wants to paralyze Americans from voting. Olivia Benson's spiritual advice should empower us. Anyway, Americans for 2 days are in an uproar over what seems like a Trump threat to stay in power. Even if he loses the likely occurrence, how many times does the president have to tell us his words are either lies or powerless before we start disregarding him completely? Completely. He is followers while misinformed and loud are in the minority, and the militant ones even fewer. So remember that. Stop the fear and go vote, in his words, BIGLY. Attorney and author Olivia Benson visits us at the right time with an empowering message. She is the author of the book Answers from Within, Answers to Work-Life Issues in the Age of Spiritual Evolution, that codifies her empowerment message. It is read that whether it is a read that whether male or female will elevate one's thought process. So let's go ahead and get busy with our first video. Check this one out. I want you to imagine something. Suppose Obama did this. Suppose Obama went ahead and answered this reporter's question about a peaceful transition. Imagine if Obama just went ahead and said, well, check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
I understand that, but people are rioting. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transferal of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and we'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation. Get rid of the ballots, and we'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation. The ballots are out of control. You know it. And you know who knows it better than anybody else? The Democrats know it better than anybody else.
In other words, I win, I win. You win, I win. I mean, it is crazy. What he's trying to tell you is that no matter what, Donald Trump will be, or he believes he will continue being the president. I've been thinking about why is it that Donald Trump is so taken with the mail-in ballots? And here's the deal. Mail-in ballots mean there's traceability. Mail-in ballots mean you have a physical representation of the vote. If you are into all these machines, these electronic machines without audit trails, it actually means that maybe those things can be fudged with. And do we know in the red states, and which a lot of the transitional states, the battleground states or red states, do we really know how secure those voting machines are in the areas where, where he predominates? We don't really know that, right? So he's probably have enough information right now for people to break into enough of those machines that he believes can make a difference. And the thing about it, folks, is we have to be very careful about that. Mail-in ballots, he's very scared of them because, again, there is traceability on these mail-in ballots. Now, in the electronic machines that are in the very populous areas, we don't know whether they can be hacked or whatever, but these are things that we have to be cognizant of. As I've heard many people say, the one thing we want to do is vote in droves and let our votes be known. We are supporting somebody other than Donald Trump. So it is quite evident that this landslide I've been speaking about for a long time would be effectuated. One of the things that he wants to do is he wants to put the fear into people. He wants to make people feel helpless. He wants to make people feel impotent. He wants to make people feel like it's a foregone conclusion. I'm going to be the winner. Why bother? Do not allow that to cauterize. You make sure and go to the polls. If you can, go to the poll in person, do that. If you must use a mail-in ballot, do that. If you must, whatever you must do, we must show overwhelming support against this guy and support the entire Democratic ticket to ensure that fascism doesn't take hold any further in this country and we start to mitigate it immediately. I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly. My buttons are slow. Today. Anyway, what I've just heard, I just before I came on here, and that's why I'm sort of if you notice, I was on the phone earlier when the thing started. I was speaking to the voting expert, and he's not very concerned about the machines being bugged or hacked or anything like that. He's more concerned about damaged machines that find their way in areas that are generally democratic. So I mean, he doesn't believe that the hacking that I've been concerned about is really a huge concern. So that is one thing as an addendum that I want to add. But why is I want to show you how if Donald Trump thinks somehow he can put that into the ethos and scare people and somehow they're not going to react. I really love one of the Pulitzer-winning journalists had to say. Check this out and then we'll move it on the other side. It takes a lot to get a Pulitzer winner like Eugene Robinson sort of ticked off, right? Well, the president did a good job of it when he decided to say that no matter what, he is going to win the election in 2020, even though we all know he's going to lose in a landslide. Check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side.
The problem with the president is whether Chris Wallace at Fox asks him some version of will you relinquish office or have a peaceful transfer of power, or this question came up. It's meant to sort of it's your opportunity when you are asked that question to pass on what you believe democratic institutions and democratic societies do. So the right answer to that is, of course, if I lose, there'll be a peaceful transfer of power. But he can't bring himself to say those basic things.
No, because he doesn't really believe in democratic institutions. He believes in Donald Trump, and period. Full stop. So look, this is where I say, bring it on. Okay. I mean, I'm a journalist, right? I'm not an activist. I don't belong to a political party. I cover demonstrations. I don't participate in them. I don't even put up yard signs, right, for candidates, because I'm a journalist, an opinion journalist, but I'm a journalist. That's what I do. But if this guy starts trying to actually mess with the process and the results of our election, then I'm not a journalist anymore. I'm in the streets, because this is fundamental. I go all Crispus Attucks and Thomas Paine at that point, because this is our country. This is yep. Vital. This is an essential part of our country, and I won't stand for it, and I believe the American people won't stand for it either.
And the American people won't stand for it either, and I think that is what's so important. This Pulitzer Prize winner, Eugene Robinson, he's always very calm. But if he's willing to say, let that president attempt to steal this election in whatever form, then I will drop my Pulitzer-winning journalist stance and I will be on the streets. And you know what? There are so many people that I know that they are ready to do that. They will not allow this election to be stolen, especially since this is an existential election and the person that we have as president has already killed 200,000 people and counting, likely 300,000 people or more by the time the election comes around? No, absolutely not. It's not gonna be allowed for this president to steal an election that pretty much will be won in a landslide, all things being equal. Okay, we're back. Anyhow, folks, we have sort of a long interview, so what I need to do is I need to go ahead and get that started right away, and then we'll come back at the end of this interview and start talking some other issues. Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Egberto Will is your host. Today we have a very special guest. I found this young lady, first of all, this is interesting because we grew up together. And I happen to be taking care of my LinkedIn account and cleaning things up, and her name pops up and it shows that she is the author of a book. And when I saw the name, I said, I wonder if this is the same person. And it turned out to be. Welcome to Politics Done Right, Olivia Benson de Colón. ¿Cómo estás? How are you doing, my friend?
I am very well. Thank you very much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. Really appreciate
Absolutely so. And you know, it's, are you going to age sometime? Let me just ask that question.
I have no intention of aging. How about
You
that?
have no, that is fine.
No intention.
Okay. Anyhow, folks, we back in the old days, I think I remember us singing in a group called the Gospel Messengers.
We did.
And
Singing.
Those were the good old days. But Olivia, you wrote a book, and the title of your book is called Answers from Within: Answers to Work-Life Issues in the Age of Spiritual Evolution.
That's correct.
Question. First of all, I saw a video that you did on LinkedIn. I don't know what institution it was. It's in an island in the Caribbean, I believe.
I was in Jamaica.
That was very impressive. And then I said, you know what? I need to talk to her about this. Over here, we talk mostly deep politics. But what's interesting is everything is now politics. And after listening to, well, you can, I tell you what, after I say that, you can say, well, let's give that a second thought. I think everything is somehow relates itself to politics. And I said, you know what? I think you have a lot to offer to our audience. So first of all, why did you write the book?
Wow, that's one of the best questions, because I think there's so many people out there that would find themselves in my position. I had come from Panama. I was living here in the United States. I traveled back and forth a few different times, but finally established myself here in Florida. I had sort of sought the American dream. I mean, I went after it with everything. I went to undergrad, I went to law school, I became a lawyer, and I was married and I had a child, and there I was sitting on what I describe in the book on the 40th floor of one of the nicest buildings in Miami with the river going by and everything. And one day I said, this is just not it. It's not happening. Everything that I had thought was not it. And it was also amazing because I could see the partners, the people who were ahead of me. And I was like, wait a second. So this means that I could do this for 20 years and I would be them. And what I was seeing as them was not what I wanted for me. In addition, and I'm sure there are a lot of women that can relate to this, I had a child and I did not see that child often. And it really wore on me until I finally said one day, there has to be a way that this can all come together, where I can work, I can take care of my kid, I can have some sense of fulfillment. There has to be a way. And at that particular time, I didn't conceptualize, a book at that particular moment. But I literally one day walked into my office, walked into my boss's office and said, you know what? I am leaving. And it was mostly at that time centered around the fact that I couldn't reconcile the practice with raising my son. His father and I had gotten divorced, so I was, the one. And if his father wasn't there and I wasn't there, then who would raise him? There would be nobody there. And so I really, on that, decided this can't continue. And I literally went home. I cashed in my 401k. I stayed home with him for well, really from that point forward. But in my mind at that particular time, it was just like I needed to spend some time with him. He needed me to be present. And I did that. And, things worked out. I got work. I was able to start working from home. Something I think I said to you, I didn't even have the idea that that was what I was going to be, doing. But eventually it unfolded, and there I was. And that's when the idea came to me that I needed to kind of analyze myself and put it together. And particularly at that time, it was about women. Because as a young woman, I was saying, I can't be the only person going through this. There have to be tons and tons of women saying, this doesn't make any sense. And it's a very interesting thing because there's a lot of disparity and in the whole situation, because many women, for example, with the practice of law, which I'm familiar with, go to law school and so on and so on. Many of them do not this issue. And it becomes a financial issue because if you're my male counterpart and you go on, you're going to accumulate a certain level of wealth and benefits and so on. Meanwhile, I've had to step out because I have other duties. And so financially, I may not get to the same place. For me, none of that mattered. The only thing I cared about at that particular point was that I needed to make sure that my son was taken care of, because that was a mistake that I couldn't live with if something, had not gone the way I wanted. So that's where I conceptualized, and it took me 20 years to finish that book. And one day after, I thought, okay, I think I've gathered enough information and enough experience more than anything to share with women and men about, how you make it through something like this. Then I was able to sit down and say, okay, here we go.
No, I think 20 years, a lot of people say 20 years to write a book. Well, what I saw within the book is that the 20 years was well spent, because, all these things you learn progressively. And as you learn these things progressively, you are able to talk to people from a position of experience, which I think it's rather important. Now, I want to go back because I like the way you start the book. You kind of tell a little bit about your history. And the authors that I like, usually talk their history first, because through their history, you best understand their words. Because you can then see how those words are cauterized. That is what actually caused it. So tell us a little bit about, like I said, in this case, I happen to know the author. Así que yo sé que comenzaste en Colón. I know that you started in Colón, okay? So tell us a little bit about your transition from this little kid in Cologne, seeing in the initial first American experience in Washington, D.C., going back to Cologne, and then how you developed womanhood and experience in Miami.
Right. Well, it's interesting because my mother went to study in Washington, D.C. So before I was about probably 6. We left Panama and went to study in Washington, D.C. And literally, I didn't know that because I didn't know it was the hood, right? But we went to live in what would be considered the hood of Washington, D.C. And she went to a school which now I believe is called the District of Columbia, the University of the District of Columbia. But back in those days, it was called the District of Columbia Teachers College. And we lived in what would be considered the hood. I had left Panama, Cologne specifically. I had been to Catholic schools with the nuns, and I was very, disciplined.
Structured.
And the other structured. And I landed in public school in Washington, D.C., which was an amazing experience in and of itself. I mean, I was in the hood. You had to defend yourself. You had to be able to talk trash and, you know, pretend like you were tough. I mean, it was the most incredible thing. At the age of 7, I was in Washington, D.C. Now, the most interesting thing is that I left there in going into 2nd grade. When I got to Washington, D.C., they put me in 4th grade. They said, no, this is, you know, they said, no, she's got to go to 4th grade. When I finished 4th grade, they put me in 6th grade. And when I finished 6th grade, they said she can go to high school. And then with all the craziness and the insanity, when my mother finished school, we went back to Panama. And in Panama, they put me in 5th grade. It's like, we don't care what they say over here, you're in 5th grade.
Oh, yes, we know that.
And they could have put me back to where I was supposed to be, but, you know, but the experience of Washington, D.C. was interesting because in terms of race, and which is one of the chapters in the book, the thing is that I did not understand. I was there. We were in this particular environment, you know, in Washington, D.C., and the neighborhood was, I wouldn't say it was violent or anything, but it wasn't the best neighborhood. And the kids in the school were pretty hardcore. I mean, we were like, you know, we were like Catholic children in the midst of, you know, war, so to speak. And so I didn't conceptualize, but I had the experience. And I remember one particular experience, which was we were going on a field trip from our school to, let's say, a school in the suburbs. And I remember thinking as a kid, wow, this school is very different from, you know, from the school I just came to, but still no ability to put context into what was essentially the issue of race and racial disparities in America. And after that, I come back, I go finish practically high school, except for the last 6 months of high school. And we then decide it's time for me to go to college, and we come back and come to Florida. So my life has been back and forth in the United States. And at this point, I've lived more here than I've lived anywhere else. Now, the one thing that I also mentioned in the book is that, you know, I come from what I consider to be a very working class family. My grandparents immigrated to Panama, most of them, to work. They came from Jamaica, they came from Barbados. Some of them, even one generation before, they came from Cuba. These were all working people. And as I've evolved and began to understand the role of race and all this in America, one of the things that I always thought about was like, you know, these were people who were looking for life, were looking for work, were looking for hope. And the last thing, the most important thing, let me say that differently, to me, as a person of African descent, is to make their every effort worth it. And that was something that was behind, and particularly with my maternal grandmother, she was born in Jamaica. She ran away from Jamaica because her father wanted her to marry someone that she did not want to marry. And she ran away and came to Panama as a 19-year-old by herself. And she worked like a Trojan. And to me, as I grew up, I wanted more than anything. And in the book, I call her Granny. In the book, I
love that story, yeah.
Yes, I wanted everything that she had fought for, because this is pretty liberated, because in those days, if your father said you're going to do this, you pretty much had to do it. And she decided she was going to do it and made the choice of a lifetime, because she never went back. She raised her kids. She suffered whatever she suffered and gave me an opportunity to do something bigger than what I might have been otherwise able to do. So, and in the book, I tell the story, I know maybe you've seen it, the story of the uniform. It's the story of the Catholic schoolgirl uniform. I had one, and I stained it in blue, and my grandmother stayed up the whole night and washed that uniform until the next day it was clean and dry. And I went to school like nothing happened. Now, when you have people who do those kinds of things for you, I think it's so important to make it, you know, worthwhile. And I think us as people of African descent, you know, we have a lot that we could be angry about. We have a lot that we could say, but above all, I think, my God, these people survived on a ship for however long, you know, packed in feces and all kinds of stuff, and they made it just so you could be here, and then suffered all kinds of things to make sure that they were alive, and now you're here. How can you not wake up and make a difference? And so those were all the different things that I had going on in the back of my head, and the things that really, you know, gave me impulse. Because then here I am, a generation that survived, and now I have a kid, right? And I have to say, well, what am I going to give him? What am I going to do to make sure he makes it? Because if I'm gone, he's got nothing. And so all of those different forces, my grandmother, or my granny, as we would say,
Granny.
and, you know, all these people who made all these sacrifices behind. And then here I am in America, the land of opportunity. This is what everybody dreams about. And here I am. This is my moment to sort of really pull it together. And for me, it had gotten to the point where it wasn't just about making it on the level of economics, right? Because now listen, I went to law school, I'm working at a big firm, I'm making good money, and guess what now? That's not enough. What do you do with that?
Well, you know, and that is one of the reasons I really like the book. You make money and you start to say, is this all? Because you kind of had the thought that money was everything, and then when you get the money, you realize, you know, money is. I mean, I think a lot of us go through that transition. I mean, personally, that's why I became a political activist. Left my company. I mean, my own company, and said, you know what? There's more. I have a daughter. In med school, and as soon as she was done with her undergrad, I say it's hi hat now. It's full time on something that really makes you happy, and that is making a difference for other people. And that's what I love with the inspiration that comes from your book. I want to tackle a little bit of issue. I'm going to go away from some of these points, and because I think one of the things that hold people back a whole lot is ideology, the ideology that they were raised with, and that sort of issue. What impressed me with what you did is you were brave enough to say, you know what? I am going to do things my way as I learn a way that either works for me or a way that is better. Why don't you tell me something about your transition from the chains of what religion would have done to you, with what race would have done to you, and all these issues, and made yourself existentially outside of all those, and I'm going to frame those, that ball of chains, because that the chains is no longer here, metal, it's no longer that. It's all the ideological baggage that you carry. Talk to me a little bit about how you got out of a hell of a lot of that. And notice I'm asking you that question differently than you would probably want it asked, but I want to get to the core of it because I don't want it sanitized.
Okay, well, we won't sanitize it. Well, so let me say this, and I call this, and I have another book that will be coming out probably next year. And I think in that book, I don't know if I use this word, and don't remember if I use this word in this book, but in that book, I talk about my churchification, right? Because, I mean, you're talking about a churchified woman here, a churchified girl here. I was a Jehovah's Witness in quotation. I went to Catholic school. My maternal grandmother went to Baptist church when and if she went. As you know, I sang in the choir. I mean, everything in my life was around church and God and all this kind of stuff. Now, there's an advantage to this, and I was talking to a friend of mine about this morning. I will tell you that being that way at that time probably saved my life. Being guided in this narrow path, so to speak,
Narrow band. Yeah.
off the streets without any question. Now, of course, there were lots of people who were in that same path, but it didn't keep them off the street. But it worked for me. It kept me off the path. And so now I have a philosophy that says, you know what? You never know what someone needs at a particular time. And some religious path will work for different people at different times. Now, the reason that I started to ask questions was because it wasn't working anymore. And that's usually what life gives you. While it's working, you can stay with it because it's working. But the minute you realize that something is not right, that this is not giving me the results that I need, that my life is still, I'm doing all these things and my life is still out of order, now it's time for you to start searching. And that's what I did, because it wasn't the money, it wasn't the education, it wasn't the prestige, it wasn't any of those things. And it had to come from a deeper place. And I wanted to understand from a deeper level. And I was willing, because I had had so many challenging experiences in my life that I was willing to go for the deeper stuff. Because sometimes life, you can make it. You can make it, and you could, have a few cars, and you can, make yourself feel good. But if you really want the whole thing from inside out, now you have to go deeper. And so that made me begin to look at my religious beliefs, my education, and what I really felt. I had a lot of intuitive notions, but I would not have dared to explore them in my old, paradigm, because it was this and it was that, and that was just the way it was, and nobody dare ask any questions. And so as I began on the path of exploration, I literally, and I tell people, I started going to every kind of religious organization to sort of see where I would find myself. And the one notion, after a lot of time and a lot of work, that really began to consolidate everything in and comes back to the book, is that there is one universal power. I don't care what you call it, religious, whatever the religious stuff is, nobody cares, but there's one power. And this power has a certain kind of intelligence, and there's a certain kind of order behind everything that is done. Your job when you come here is to figure out what that is. And a lot of the other stuff that we get with different religious dogma is really stuff we make up. Human, when I say we, I mean humans. We just make it up, make it convenient. In some instances, I say to myself, well, sometimes generations have made things up to keep order, right? So we want to make sure that we keep all these humans in order. So we do this. And some of that has validity, because God knows if somebody had not laid down some order at some time, we might all still be, behaving a certain kind of way. Well, like everything else, there are positives and there are negatives. But the best part of it is that now we're in a different time. So the stuff that we might have used back then to kind of keep order, now we're in a position where we can review it. Here we are, let's review it. What makes sense and what doesn't make sense? What should we keep and what should we get rid of? That's really the question. And so here we are in 2020, and we get a chance to look at it again. And one of the things that and this comes into the subtitle of the book, we're in the age, what I consider to be the age of spiritual evolution. And the reason I say that is because we had the agricultural age, we moved. Industrial age, we moved. We came into the computer age, and I'm not naming every one, but we are now in the computer age. And then what happens? What happens next? Where are we going next? So we've basically, as humans, we've dominated all these things. We've dominated agriculture. We've dominated industry. We're dominating computers. So now the question is, where do we go next? And I think that the next is we have to go to another level. And if you probably saw this, I always say I have a love affair with Albert Einstein, because Einstein, who is the genius of all
E
geniuses,
is equal to MC squared, baby.
exactly. And he says, in order to discover the great secrets of the universe, I want to know the mind of God. That's where he goes. And that's the understanding. So that is the next level. Who are we? Why are we here? What are we doing? And who's doing it with us? So that's why I call it the age of spiritual evolution, because we've passed through all of these other ages, and now it's going to a higher level, maybe a metaphysical level, where we are not, everything is not based on material reality. That's what we are talking about at this particular time.
Well, look, Olivia, we're not going to talk too much about all the details of your book, because the truth of the matter is, I want people to get this book. And the reason I want people to get this book is the book is, I talk to a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people with a lot of books. And I can tell you that this is one of the one of the better ones that I've seen, because it leaves you, first of all, your beginning is important. It brings a reality that anybody, first of all, can succeed. Secondly, it gives them the hope and expectation that they will actually, or they have the ability to accomplish something. Not necessarily something that is going to bring them money, but
Right.
accomplish something that's going to make their lives rewarding.
Yes.
So we don't have a lot of time left, but what I want to tackle are some of the today's events.
Yeah.
Some of the talking points that I'd like to say that everybody's talking about. Coronavirus. How does that play with the things that you do, with the things within your book?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about coronavirus is that of how it affected, obviously, the economy, and right along with that, our jobs and our work. And most of us were distressed to some extent or the other, because, if you don't work, you don't make money. So that was the essence of the biggest part of the problem. However, there was something deeper beneath that. It was not just that I couldn't make money, but if I'm not working, what am I going to do? Who am I? Why am I here? What am I going to do with myself if I do not have something to contribute? The question is, we come to the planet, we're here to do something. We all have gifts and talents. And even if you can't get to use your gifts and talents, you want to be doing something. And I think a lot of people had to sort of look at themselves. I mean, I think it's for some, maybe even a decision point, where you say, listen, I know I have something to do with while I'm here. And I've been doing this job for a long time, and it pays me, and I'm happy. But listen, I may need to reevaluate. If this is the way that life is going to be, so tenuous, so unpredictable, I need to get to it really, very, very quickly.
And coronavirus gives a lot of people the transition point that they needed to make that change that's out there. Now, when it comes to dividing and conquering, give me dividing and conquering in the context of how you talk about it in the book, in short sentences.
Right. Well, Divide and Conquer, the chapter is essentially about race and racism in America, particularly what I call the American brand of race and racism. And I'd like to make it clear that humans all along history until today have been racist in other places in the world, and it still continues. America, though, has a very special brand. And in the context of the book, the reason why it's important is because the underlying thing is that everybody comes with a gift, talent, skill, ability. You're here to do something. However, given the issues of race in America, economic disparities, and today even what we see, the treatment by the police and all these different issues, what happens frequently is that people never really have the opportunity to express their full potential. At least a significant number of people. And it's unfortunate because America could be so much greater if everybody had the opportunity to really come into themselves. Of course, as humans, we always say, listen, I want to keep you down so I can go ahead. Well,
I am glad you said that because I like to express race in a capitalist economic in the modal, which means we use it as a tool. And you know, so actually, I'd love for you to explore that in your next book because the chapter on race and you know race and division. I think people need to see that it's really not a color thing. It's a little bit
no,
deeper than just a huge,
much deeper than that.
much deeper. Now, one of your the real things that you get to is men and women,
Yes.
balance of power.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole chapter, and the name of the chapter is Man's Inhumanity to Woman. And it's a historic, it takes the history, takes every aspect of how men and women have interacted, and maybe, you know, the origins, not maybe, but the origins of that behavior and things along along those lines. The bottom line is it's a different age, it's a different time. And now we have an opportunity where we can say, what the world needs is really the balance of power between men and women. Now, what always happens is that some men really fear that. And my understanding of the way things are supposed to be is that it's not supposed to be guys on top of women or women on top of guys. It's supposed to be a balance. That's why the world is male and female. If you look at the statistic, the world somehow, the universe provides that there's an ongoing balance, 50-50. Yet, the most amazing thing is that in all the wars, in all the significant decisions, everything that happened, most of the times, women are not at the table. And that is amazing. How can you be 50% of the population and yet not be at the table? You're the bearer of soldiers and still not at the table. And that's where we are today. It's always tumultuous when change comes, but that is what we are working on. Regardless of how you feel, that's what needs to be worked out. It's the balance. And that's why Ruth Bader Ginsburg was so significant, because she was a person that came along and moved us in leaps and bounds into this position of balance of power. And that, of course, with the new candidate, the vice presidential candidate, that's significant. But I think the most important thing is that the guys who feel, or the men who feel fear underlying women coming to the table, have to realize that it's always about balance. It's not about one group dominating the other. It's coming into balance. And those, you know, it's like when you see somebody married for 50 years, his power and her power is just a combination, and they work together. And that's where we're trying to get.
You know, it's interesting because coming from Panama, I did suffer from the chauvinist social
No,
thing. Well, come on.
no.
And and but it's amazing how liberating when you leave all those prejudices off. When I
Yeah.
when I was no and also homophobic, you know, Panama. So I mean, when I lost it all, when I lost the sexism, the homophobia, the all these things, it actually became liberating
Yes.
because finally you could actually look at people for what they had upstairs. And you made a mention of something that I kind of want to sort of expand on, and that is, it's not up to, for me, it's not even about 50-50. It's about who's got it. In other
Yes,
words, if Olivia
exactly.
Benson knows this stuff and Egberto Willis know nothing about it, why the hell? Because I have a penis, I should rule.
Exactly.
It makes
Exactly.
absolutely no sense.
No.
And when you look at the rationale behind these things, then all those isms go away.
Right.
Miss Benson,
I wanted
what
to mention,
haven't?
sorry, let me just say this,
Yes.
especially because you're a guy and you have a daughter. And I sometimes don't understand how men having a daughter can still maintain those, you know, you have your daughter, you want her to be a doctor, you want her to succeed. How can you have limiting thoughts about what a woman can do?
It
And
is that is actually so very true. I looked at my daughter one time, you know, she was in her Baptist church, and I there are a lot of things that I used to tell my daughter to do. I would tell her, "Hey, ask that pastor, why is it because he has a penis he can be the pastor and you cannot because of what?"
Right.
I told her to ask the pastor, and just like I told her to ask her teacher, if Christopher Columbus discovered America, who are the people that were already here again?
Yes, that's in the
You know,
book. It's in
so
the
those
book.
were. I was, I was always politically active. So I mean,
Right.
so that is the thing. But anyhow, Miss Benson,
Yes.
what haven't I asked you that you wish to hell I'd said? Well, damn it, why didn't you ask me that?
Well, there's one story that I like to bring to people's attention. It's not that you haven't really asked, but it was under the context of divide and conquer. And there are two, one relating to women, which is man's inhumanity to woman. And that's the fact that many years ago, Jimmy Carter resigned from the Southern Baptist Convention. I mean, it's something that is not spoken about very often, but I think it's so significant. I mean, Jimmy Carter is one of the most amazing human beings that I know in across the board that exists. I don't know him personally, I wish I did, but just in terms of who he is. And he resigned because he came to the Baptist Convention and said, listen, it's time for us to move beyond some of these restrictions we have for women and girls and this and that and the other. And the convention simply refused. They said no. And when they said no, he resigned. And again, it's not something that is spoken about often, but Jimmy Carter resigned because he said it was time for us to move beyond these limiting beliefs about what women can and cannot do. And I think, in fact, it is time for us to look differently. Nobody's going to lose anything if we advance our story, if we advance the understanding of the story so that we bring equality to the table. And along the lines of race in America, there's a story also that I tell in the book about Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I mean, we're talking about, I can't even tell you how many degrees very quickly, 3 or 4 degrees, astrophysics, this, he's a director of
To
the
my
planetarium.
University
Exactly.
of Texas, Austin.
He, amazing human being. And he's at this meeting and this guy asks a question about what's up. And literally the guy says, what's up with chicks and science? Sort of in a disparaging way, as though to suggest that women really just don't come in with the genetics to have an interest or the ability to do science. And he responds in such, because he's very funny, he's very interesting, he's very charismatic, and he responds in such an interesting way. And essentially he says, listen, it's not about genetics, it's about society. Because he explains that, listen, when I said I wanted to be an astrophysics, it was going against everything in the universe. Everybody said, don't you want to be an athlete? Don't you want to this? Don't you want to that? I mean, he had to fight to make his way to become an astrophysicist and to stand where he stands today. And he notes, listen, not only I made it, but I don't know how many bodies are behind that never made it that were on the path. And he tells a story of him being in a store, walking out the door, walking with a white male at the same time, the alarm going off, and despite all his titles and all his prestige and all the things, accolades and everything that he has, the police stops him. And the other white male continues walking.
The guy who actually stole the thing.
The guy who actually stole from the store, and apparently the guy knowing this. And he says, well, listen, it's a fact of life in America. And what I know is that in order for you to move beyond all of this resistance, the natural resistance, you have to know who you are, you have to be attached to your gift, and you have to be willing to fight through everything to bring your full potential into manifestation. And I think that's what all of us need to know, whether it's male, female, homosexual, whatever your challenge is. You are unique, special, gifted, talented. You have something to bring. You're not here for no reason. There is a reason. And you have to fight. You have to make your way. You got to hang in there and bring it into manifestation.
Olivia Benson, author of Answers from Within, Answers to Work-Life Issues in the Age of Spiritual Evolution.
Yes.
Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for listening to that. Yes, Olivia is very, very deep, very, very smart. And yes, she is inspiring. Actually, I when I looked at her video on LinkedIn, I'm like, damn, I got to get Olivia here and do some talking out here with them, especially with that book that she wrote. The book is an excellent piece of work as well. So check it out. Anyhow, folks, let me go ahead and welcome all my peeps. How you guys doing? Michael Rudnan, welcome aboard. Bridge MCP, welcome aboard. AVQ. Let's see, Masticator, how are you doing, my brother? Let's see who else is here. Para ver. Norman Reynolds, welcome aboard, my brother. Let's see who am I. Deidre, how you doing, Deidre? Welcome aboard. Paul Fleming from ATL, welcome aboard. Tank 28, my troublemaker, welcome aboard. Let's see who else is here. Para ver. Let's see. I'm scrolling down. Janet Duffy Graver. Janet, actually, that stuff that you said about Catholicism, she's actually now beyond just plain old religion and trying to do a whole lot more expansive. So your son, as far as she's concerned, she would pretty much say your son has hit the nail on the head. Let's see. Para ver, let's continue here. So welcome aboard, Janet Duffy. I think I got Bridge already. Who else? Anybody who wants to be called up? Blair Halfley, welcome aboard. Deidre, faux pas. Tell me what you mean by the homosexual faux pas. I want to know what is that. Hey, Hope, how you doing? Anyway, folks, please do remember, if you're just joining us, if you are on YouTube, you can become a supporter on YouTube by clicking that join button. Would love for you to do that and continue to support what we're doing in the progressive space, because you know that is important, my brothers and sisters. Curtis Jacobs, my brother-in-law. How you doing, my brother? Nice to see you here. Yeah, she's very interesting. Okay, there's another option that you have to support Politics Done Right, and that is to go to politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. That is how you can subscribe to our program. Likewise, if you want to support the program, you can go to, let's see what it is, politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. And for those who are not on YouTube right now but would like to join our YouTube channel, remember we're going to have a bash on October, I think, 3rd, to just have a streaming for those who have joined Politics Done Right on YouTube. So that is the link there, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Please consider going there. It's pretty cheap, pretty inexpensive, because we want a lot of people. A lot of folks try to say, my thing is, if you notice, even the books that I have, I try to make my books very, very low as possible. There are some limits to how low Amazon would allow you to go, because they want to make their cut, etc., etc. But the idea is, I want numbers. I want a lot of people reading this stuff. So please go ahead and get my book as well. How do you get my book? The title of the book is It's Worth It: How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors. And I just put the link in the feed. But you can also go directly to our store if you want to purchase it directly from us, which means you take out the middleman. And that is at politicsdoneright.com/store. But again, those that are on YouTube, become a member and then participate in our October 3rd session, which is just click that join button. And if you click the join button now, I'll get a blip to say, hey guys, how you do? You just joined. Anyhow, before we go, we have about 3 minutes. I want to say something. Right now, a lot of people are feeling sort of perturbed. Some people are scared. Some people are concerned about where the country is going. Some people think we've never been here before. Thank you very kindly. Bridge MCP just became a subscriber to Politics Done Right on YouTube. Come on, folks. Let's get some more of those. Whether you are watching us on YouTube right now or not, you can join. Here's the link for the YouTube that you can do right away. So thank you, Bridge, for becoming a member on YouTube. And for those of you that are listening on Twitch or listening on Facebook, I just added the link to your feed that you can click on that to become a member on YouTube. I would love that for support that. But anyhow, let's go ahead and talk this election, because I want people's minds at ease. I really do. I don't want us to be scared. I don't want us to be concerned. I don't want us to be worried. Oh, you used the link. Thank you, Breach, for using that link. I love it. I love it. I don't want you to be concerned, folks. I want all of us to do what needs to be done. And that is, we need to vote ourselves. We need to talk to our right-wing neighbors or left-wing neighbors or centrist neighbors and let them know that this democracy is ours. And if we allow this democracy to slip, it's our fault. Donald Trump is one person. If America decides that Donald Trump is not the president we want, and he tries to use constitutional mechanisms to somehow install himself, we simply will not accept it. So I don't want us sitting back down there and worry. And about civil war, thanks for saying that, Brija. I'm glad that you brought up that thing about civil war. I am very not concerned about civil war because civil war could occur when we were a separated nation. In other words, I have relatives in just about every state. So therefore, we can't have a state separation. We can have disputes among people. The coup is what Donald Trump has said he wants to do. When he talks about going to Republican legislatures and having them select the electors who actually elect people, that's a coup. But we will not stand for that, the American people. And it won't be that your right-wing brothers and sisters going to fight you. My sister is right of me. And my sister loves me more than she loves Donald Trump. So when it comes to that part, have faith in your relatives and everybody else. Because that is the truth. People talk about, there ain't no civil war coming. I've written some articles on it. There's no civil war coming. We've been here before. All we have to do is go out there and vote overwhelmingly. And if we do that, all will be fine. Take my word on that. Donald Trump requires a miracle to win the popular vote. He requires a miracle to pull off that all these politicians are going to sell their soul and run the risk of eventually being charged with treason. So there's a whole lot of things that won't go wrong. So what makes me so positive, Janet Duffy Graver asks? Reality, talking to people, both on the left and on the right. The radicals gives you, when you watch TV and you see let me give an example and I'm going to go over by 2 minutes. When you see radicals on TV, if you look at right-wing TV, they scare their people. They make the 4 blocks of protests in Portland look like Portland is burning. And the left does the same thing as well. When the left goes ahead and says, oh, it's going to be the end of the world if we lose, if the Supreme Court goes to 6-3. Oh, it's going to be the end of the world if, we do those kinds of things, right? We have to not fall for the con. I'm out of time right now. Let's talk tomorrow. Tomorrow, I won't have a long interview like this one. And we can talk. I'll have the phone lines open that if you want to call in and discuss these issues. What I don't want is for people to get scared, so paralyzed that they don't go out there and vote because of the paralysis. People can be paralyzed to such a point that they just don't move. And that's what I don't want. So let's talk tomorrow. I know you're scared, Janet, but I'm telling you, trust your friend, your new friend. Don't be scared. Just vote and talk to other people about voting. And let's talk tomorrow. This is Egberto Willies. This is Egberto Willies. Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this, baby. I am what? Out! Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.